But one thing that I got either A, lucky with, or B, just kind of figured out this year was I was thinking about my deer that I killed out of state, and I saw every single one of those deer, like either the day of or the day before I shot them.
That's huge.
Um, yeah, and I was just thinking about how that's kind of crazy, like to think about the the Nebraska buck. I I saw the night before walking out. I was walking out of the woods to come do one of these shows, and I jumped him, doing some scouting kind of by the road before I went to the vehicle to go to McDonald's to do the show. Um, and then I ended up sitting on him that next evening and killing him. And then the Wisconsin buck I shot out of state, we saw him driving home. He was out in front of our headlights. Uh, the evening before I shot him. And then my Ohio buck, I was scouting to a new area and I got to almost where my pin was, and uh, he was walking through the woods with another buck. You know, they're essentially the other buck was chasing him around. There was a hot doe right there, and then they went off, and I set up and shot him that evening.
You went up and got right on the trail where he was moving?
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. I could see, I was, if you can imagine, like I'm down at the bottom of in a, in a hub or down the ridge. And I looked up and my buck was the buck I shot was walking kind of, kind of the opposite direction of me. And then another buck came and he was chasing him around, and they ended up running down to me. And I mean, they were too far, too thick for me to shoot. And then they both followed each other back into there's a clear cut up there, and they went into a specific spot on the clear cut. And then I just kind of set up there on that spot. Cause a lot of times in the clear cuts that are thick, there's only kind of a couple of ways they go in and out of those things a lot of times. At least for convenience sake for them, they obviously can go through them anywhere if they need to, but there was some
but unpressured, they use the same trails over and over again.
Yeah. There were some obvious areas where they could go in and out without having to fight with the brush with their antlers and stuff. But anyway, and I think the reason that I was so successful is I think a lot of people on out of state trips, sometimes they get it turns into more of a camping trip for them, or they hang around camp for half the day. And I was very adamant about, like, if I'm here, I'm going to be out in the woods, either scouting or glassing or doing something, maybe it's not hunting, I didn't set very many mornings other than Ohio, but that was just because it was the middle of the rut and the deer were going crazy. I don't know. Do you think, you see that when you've been in a lot of deer camps over the years now? Do you see that very often?
Yeah, I'm not guilty of that at all. I want to get away from people and I want to be alone.
Yeah.
I do my best alone.
Mm-hmm.
But filming wise, I always like to have somebody around. You work with people, you work with groups and stuff. And I think a lot of times those groups and stuff, even though that's great for us because it helps out the show, it gets a lot of good footage, it gets different tactics and stuff involved, and people learn a lot more.
Yeah.
From a personal standpoint, I think it hurts me a little bit because I'd be in camp a lot less. I'd be answering texts a lot less, things like that, helping other people. I mean, you've seen it. I mean, even you've been involved in that where you got to stop and help somebody. And there's like, it was kind of a relief at the Battle of the Bows when you got your buck, because then you could help.
Whoever.
With the other people, and I could actually hunt.
Yeah.
I think, sure. When you were describing those bucks, I was thinking about that. And I think that I would have probably killed each one of those in the same scenario, the same way you did, except for one. The one in the Battle of the Bows where I was with you when that thing crossed the road. I didn't think there was a chance in hell of catching that buck. So I learned a little bit. Yeah. And the thing is, really, if I would have did what you did, and I would have stopped and studied the maps and looked at that oxbow and stuff, it did kind of come together, and I just blew that off.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you killed that because it made me take a look in the mirror on that same situation.
Yeah. And I mean, my knee jerk reaction was the same as yours when we saw that buck in the field, because he was actually in a private field, and like on that private field there was a big woods back there, and it looked like there's probably deer in there. You know, I kind of just assumed, oh, he came out of that woods and ran across
And
the
in the
field.
dark, I
And
couldn't
I'm
see
like,
how far that woods was away, and
oh,
I thought it was a lot closer.
yeah, it
After
was
we
like
shot the buck and we went back there,
a
and I was
quarter
looking at it, I
mile.
was like, holy crap, that buck did not walk all that ways from that woods. He did come from that field, come across like you thought he did.
Yeah.
Now, did you? I mean, I remember you in the truck distinctly saying that I'm going to kill that buck tomorrow, and
Maybe I don't remember,
but I would have to think that it was really coming together for you more when you started studying the maps on Onyx and your phone
yeah,
and stuff, and looking at how it laid out, and probably looking at how far away that woods is. And I didn't even give a second thought to look at that stuff because I just assumed it was laid out in a way that I couldn't hunt it because it was coming out of the private woods into a private field.
right.
Literally, it was coming from the other way, and you figured that out, and I didn't.
Yeah. And what tipped me off, like whenever I went back the next day, I parked there and I just real quick ran down without my bow or my stand or anything. I just ran down to kind of where the river bottom and there was another like just grass field that you had to walk through to get down to the river bottom. And when I got to the river bottom, right away I started seeing big buck sign where there was big rubs and stuff. I'm like, okay, yeah, that, he's down here somewhere. And then, I'd already looked at the map to see that those oxbows kind of coming together. And when I got down there in the oxbow, there was even more, more sign that kind of solidified that he was living down there.
Now, you thought he might be in the oxbow, right? But when you set up, he was actually coming from a little bit different spot.
Yeah, he was. So I didn't really notice this when I was sitting in the, or scouting my way in there. I noticed when I got up in the stand, there was two oxbows essentially that came into one little area right there. And I kind of was assuming, like, oh, if he's in this, I was thinking in my head, like, I need to set up to where I can shoot both these oxbows. And then there was a little pond that was kind of came off the river. Like, sometimes the river will puddle up, right? There was a pond right there that kind of pinched down. So it was a perfect spot, but there was only one tree and it was half dead. And I mean, it wasn't, I was only two sticks in the air.
That was that girl's tree for sure.
Yeah. But there was some brush and stuff around it that helped conceal me. But then when I got up in the stand, I started looking around and there was like a little island that I kind of was thinking, oh, they could bed out there too. Is an island just in the middle of the river bottom grass. And that's what he came out of there. It's probably 100 yards from where I was sitting.
And still, I think that even if them being in that island,
yeah,
I think you had the right setup because if a buck's bedding in there someplace else, in my opinion, at that time frame that we were there, before he goes out to those fields, he's going to check those oxbows.
Yeah,
he's either going to be in one of those oxbows or he's going to check them for does. He's going to walk past that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it if you looked around if there's scrapes right there or some sign that he was checking for those for does.
Yep, I'd say he was probably going to. He's probably bedding that little, because that island didn't have trees. It was just like brushy crap. So I couldn't go sit out in the island. I mean, he would have busted out of there. And I'm saying he just got up and moseyed his way to those oxbows to kind of, what do you want to say, stage in there, or just to check for does or whatever he was doing, before he would take our head back to the west or whatever direction it was, and then go across the road at night and go up into those cornfields, those cut cornfields, and feed with all the other.
Where the average person would have made the big mistake doing what you're doing is they would have looked around too much. They would have got their scent all over. They would have walked over here, walked over there, tried to find a sign or whatever. Where you based it mainly on the terrain, right?
Yeah.
There's a buck there someplace. He's coming through here. And you looked at it and you said, well, if he's coming through here, and if he's here, he has to be right here. And you put your faith in terrain, not in sign. I mean, obviously you got a trail or two you're looking at, but there's trails everywhere.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the terrain of the land and the funnel it's going to put them through and where you should be bedding and thinking about that instead of looking for the sign. The sign you had was you saw a buck come in and out of there. That was a shooter. And that's the
Yeah.
biggest piece of sign you can have.
Yeah. He there was some rubs there that like kind of hinted to me that, I mean, he walked down the exact trail that rub was on. And that's the one I kind of was like, okay, a buck's using this or did use it, you know, because they could kind of walk anywhere in that grass. I mean, they really could if they wanted to. But yeah, that one was probably the best, I guess, thought out type one.
So
Now,
the biggest piece of the puzzle on these public land or these trips, especially when you're on public land, is you got to hunt where there's a buck. You got to hunt where there's something that you shoot. And a lot of times it's a guessing game. And just because you see big buck sign does not necessarily guarantee there's one there in daylight, or that buck that made that sign is still there in that spot.
Yep.
So that seeing the buck is really important. And I look back at my hunts too on trips and on travels. A lot of the big stuff that I've shot, I've seen it before I shot it, just like you.
Yeah.
Where a lot of it isn't that random setting up on sign and stuff, like a lot of people think.
Yeah. None of the deer I shot this year were. I mean, none of them. Not even my Indiana buck I shot wasn't. I mean, that's my home state, so I can, you know, I'm monitoring those areas better anyway. So I knew he was there. But yeah, and then in Ohio, I actually had an encounter with a bigger buck than I shot the first evening or the second evening I was there, I guess, first full day. And I didn't see that one beforehand, but there was just some, you know, real obvious, really fresh rubs and stuff coming out of a bedding point. Man, I wish I'd have killed that deer. That was a big deer. It was bigger than one I shot, but the Ohio buck, though, that was, I mean, you know, in the rut there, if you aren't seeing deer, like, you just need to get down and move around till you see them. You know, those deer they had no care in the world or no idea I was there. They were focused on something else. And
I get that a lot from people who will tell me that, why are you moving around so much? You need to sit in a tree and hunt. You know, this isn't, you know, you're not hunting. Well, you got to find deer. You got to get on them.
Yeah.
You got to go out and find deer. And there isn't big bucks everywhere you look.
Right.
You know, you can go learn an area and learn some really good spots. You can learn where there's some good funnels. You can find some good overlook spots. And you can go back and kill deer in those spots. But in a lot of cases, the stuff we're going into blind.
You're right.
You don't know if there's a deer there. You got to hop around. You got to move and go to them. And I really want to try and kill the biggest buck I can find. So, you know, I might shoot one that's 140 or 130 or something, but I think in my mind, I don't really want to go after those bucks. I can even see one or know about one, and I kind of want to go after something bigger, especially if I believe I can do it. Like if I'm seeing sign or something that there's something bigger around, and it just that gets to be something that holds you back. I mean, you know, you can hold out too much and you don't kill nothing, but it's all a matter of what you want to get out of it for everybody.
Hey everybody, if you like the channel, make sure you subscribe right here. And if you like the clips, I got 2 more options for you. 2 options right here. Subscribe right here. See you guys.